Hello and welcome to the Rest is Entertainment Questions Edition. I am Marina Hyde.
Hi, I'm Richard Osman. Welcome to our Questions and Answers edition. Now, I have a question for you. I have a question for you. Alex Svensson has a question for you.
Thank you, Alex.
That's a strong name, isn't it?
Very strong name.
Alex Svensson. You can name a character after Alex Svensson, couldn't you?
You could do.
What happened to the Western, asked Alec, once the biggest genre in Hollywood for a decade and now nothing? Why does some genres simply disappear, and would it happen to superhero films, which seem to be the Western of the past 20 years?
Well, what happened to the Western by sort of popular belief is there was a film which you'll have heard of because it became a sort of byword for enormous flops. Heaven's Gate, which is a Michael Cimino film. It's the film he did after The Deer Hunter when he was riding very, very high. And it became a hugely troubled production. It was massively expensive. And what it crucially did was it collapsed not just its studio, United Artists, a storied and amazing sort of Hollywood studio that had a huge pedigree. It collapsed the genre of the Western.
Oh, wow. And
it basically collapsed what was called the New Hollywood, which was all these kind of young independent filmmakers kind of who were outside the studio system were making these kind of experimental films. And, you know, obviously everyone from sort of Scorsese, Coppola, in this case, Cimino. And really after that, what it did is it pulled people back. These auteurs who'd gone off and kind of existed almost without oversight. People thought, right, now we need proper oversight. We're going to be right on top of them. And the people who sort of won, in a way, were the nerds, the sort of Spielbergs and the Lucases, who were able to stick to budgets, didn't do kind of crazy things like Francis Ford Coppola did on Apocalypse Now, where he was kind of borrowing helicopters from the Philippine Air Force. And it was just a kind of famously chaotic shoot. So that's what happened to the Westerns. And every now and then, it kind of, you know, you'd have a Western that would come out like Unforgiven.
Yeah.
I don't know, am I calling Young Guns a Western? I guess I am.
310 to Yuma.
Yeah, I am. And then Django Unchained, I guess, was a sort of subverted version of a Western. In terms of superhero movies, yes, I do think that the same thing will ultimately happen to superhero movies because there's a point at which you can't filter every story through that same prism. And Kevin Feige, who's the head of Marvel, always says, you know, we've got every genre. We've got She-Hulk, which is a legal drama. It's like, no. You've only, as we said before on this thing, you have one genre, which is superhero stories. And trying to sort of funnel the entire range of human experience through that one kind of way of doing it becomes very boring. And people, superhero fatigue is real. It has set in. And I think the trouble is that the studios have committed so completely to this genre, and so many of the big things on their upcoming slates for the next kind of 2 years are within that genre. And they, for such a long time, thought of it less as kind of artistry and more as banking. It was it was the most reliable way to make money ever, really, in the history of Hollywood.
Like buying whiskey.
Yeah. Sequel after sequel made money, and they're going to have to come up with something new because eventually people will get bored with these genres and it just doesn't work any longer.
It'd be a good time to pitch a Western, in fact.
It would be now a great time. But the Western doesn't speak to us anymore as a genre, really, because we're not so close to that era and we don't see it in that same way. It just doesn't speak to a global world in the same. I think other genres will have to rise up and take its place. It's interesting why the superhero genre has been such a big deal in this time.
Well, it's interesting. There was a movie, it's probably 10 years ago now, that I thought this is the best idea for a movie of all time and did nothing in the end. And I wonder if that's because Westerns were too far in the past. And that was Cowboys versus Aliens.
Yes.
Which is, is there a better... The moment whoever came up with that just thought, hold on, it's a cowboy movie, but aliens come down and the cowboys fight the aliens. They must have just gone, this is like Christmas. Every meeting they had on that, every studio must have gone, okay, what have you got for us? And go, Cowboys versus Aliens. They go, okay, how much?
It's a 3-word pitch, yeah. As you see, Richard, I must say I wasn't taken immediately by that pitch, and I don't think it did anything.
It did nothing. Isn't that terrible?
Those genre mashup things, I think, actually work very, very rarely. And in that case, unsurprisingly, perhaps.
You'd be the only meeting they had in that day. You'd be going, what? Cowboys versus Aliens? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, just keep talking, because at the moment I've got 3 words and I don't like any of them, really.
I don't mind cowboys. I don't mind aliens.
I just don't want them to work together.
I don't want them together. Exactly. I like steak. I like jelly. I don't like steak versus jelly. What are your feelings on trigger warnings across all forms of entertainment?
I must say, I don't think that trigger warnings are a good thing. And the chief reason that I don't think they are is because they don't work. There is no science that all the research suggests that they don't impact people's emotional responses to things. In fact, the forbidden fruit effect, as it were, might be actually causing people to, and trigger warnings to have the completely opposite effect. And sometimes people call it the nocebo effect, where, you've got a negative expectation of something because you've been told that it's going to be distressing, and therefore it exacerbates distressing outcomes. There are many, many different studies on this that just say it doesn't work. And I think it's therefore a sort of piece of performative mumbo-jumbo that is probably doing more harm than good. But people go along with them and the obligation to do it because they fear that they might be being shamed as mean, or perhaps they feel they need to. It's a sort of in-group signifier, isn't it? That, certain type of people always will do a content warning and make you feel that, I just want to show that I'm a person who takes other people's feelings into consideration. But as it turns out, scientifically speaking, you're not necessarily doing that at all. In fact, you might be doing quite the opposite. And most people actually, unfortunately, can't quite still stop themselves from watching it, even though they've been given the warnings. So that in that sense, they think it doesn't in any way sort of moderate people's emotional response to it. It can actually heighten people's emotional response.
And I suppose it sort of puts a ring fence around your experience anyway that says, oh, your experience was so awful, we don't, as a culture, talk about it. This is something that we're not comfortable talking about. You probably should keep it to yourself and keep it locked away. And
part of all types of processes, I think, is having to sort of get through things and to be reminded of things. And it's inevitable that you will be reminded, some of these things are so traumatic, the events, that, my dear me, you'll be reminded of them all the time, and you'll be thinking about them every single day of your life. And it doesn't matter whether they're on a television programme or if they're not. You will be thinking about them every day of their life. So to me, it is an affectation on behalf of the producers, the broadcasters, whatever it is. And it's not to do, this is nothing to do with the victims, who, of course, I have the utmost sympathy for, but it doesn't work, and I think that they should just be dropped. OK, well, this is a good one to sort of follow on from that, I think. Don Palmer says, Bret Easton Ellis recently commented that if American Psycho was written today by a debut novelist, it would never be published. Do you agree that in recent years publishers have become oversensitive and the author as provocateur is a thing of the past?
That's interesting. I mean, I can give a definitive answer there, which is no. I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that it wouldn't get published. But it always sounds good if you're Bret Easton Ellis to go, I tell you what, the thing that I wrote would not get published today, my friend, because I'm a little bit too dangerous for this modern world. I think that books are actually quite a good place to do something iconoclastic and, against the grain and get published still. Would it sell?
You're right. I do think, just to pause you there, I do think that books are the best place to be iconoclastic and you can do really exciting and difficult and provocative things in a novel that you just could not do on television. And you can have really complicated and dark characters, and nobody's going to give you the note like, oh, I think they need to be more likeable. You can have absolutely monstrous protagonists in novels.
No one ever gives you any notes in books.
Yeah.
That's the great news. They go, listen, this is the thing you want to write. Listen, I think what he might be saying is it probably wouldn't sell as well. Maybe culturally we wouldn't take it to our hearts quite as much. But even that I don't think is right. If you like a proper horrific, Patrick Bateman type, then, there's a appetite for that. I don't see that publishing particularly is shying away from more difficult areas.
Are, you see.
Really?
I do. First of all, it should be said that American Psycho was very, very controversial at the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was a fantastic book, and I think it's an incredibly moral book, and I think it's a very misunderstood book. And, obviously there were a lot of protests about it at the time. You're right in saying that a book could never be that big. Again, to some extent, books were like movies then. You wrote a #1 New York Times bestseller, and it was like you just, you were on the top of the world, and it was almost like having a sort of blockbuster opening. But I do think that publishing is much more wary. They're wary of their own staff. I think many, many people have said, oh, we can't possibly publish this book because we don't agree with, many of the people working on this book in the publishing house at various different levels don't agree with what's in it. You see it in something like all liberal newsrooms, I don't know, the LA Times, the New York Times have had these kind of blow-ups over kind of culture war, various different types of different issues. But in fiction, I think you can be more, as you say, you can be more provocative and you can do more extraordinary things and you can actually push the envelope a lot more. And that thing that I said is in television, they are constantly telling you, can we have a sort of hearts and hugs pass that we would just like this person to be a bit more likable. And the things that, television people hate being told is that, everyone has to really be likable. And what people sort of love when in something like Succession was like, all these people are absolutely terrible. And you know what? It's been a massive show and everyone's loved it. So I think you could still have a monstrous protagonist, and I think you probably do. I haven't read any recently, but people can write in and tell us what the big sort of monstrous anti-heroes are currently in fiction. I'd like to know.
No, there's all sorts of great ones. And funnily enough, the book I recommended at the start of the year, Johnny Sweet's The Kellerby Code, that's about an anti-hero. I think that you are absolutely right. Television is far more sensitive. And by the way, I understand why. Because television is in the corner of your room and it can be on without you inviting it in, or your kids can watch it. Whereas a book, you've been to a shop, you've read the back of the book, you might have read a review of it, you paid your money, you've taken it home. So books can be whatever they want to be. The same with comedians doing a live tour. You say whatever you want because people have gone out, paid money for the ticket, got a babysitter, sat down and said, okay, I want to be entertained by you. When you're on television, I think sometimes you think there's certain material that's television wouldn't allow you to do, and I understand why. But I honestly think with publishing, and all the books you talk about find publishers, they just find different publishers, and then if they find a market, it's because they're good or bad. But I think books, I mean, I'm somebody, it will shock you to learn, I love writing likeable characters. That's what I like, and I love watching things with likeable characters. So to me, it plays into my hands. So it's not something I've ever had to come across. But yeah, I've yet to meet a book editor who wouldn't read American Psycho and just go, oh my God, this is an amazing piece of writing. And the what our culture would now call the stuff that's problematic about it is what makes it brilliant and interesting and art and something that's worth reading. And I do think Bret Easton Ellis is probably wrong. I think he would definitely find a publisher. It might not find its same place in the middle of our culture as American Psycho did, but I don't think the book industry is in a bad place in terms of what it's happy to publish.
Okay, this is your one. James Scott asks about Gogglebox. How much would people on Gogglebox be paid? Is it the same for all contestants, or would their pay be based on screen time?
I like contestants as
Gladiators. Oh no, sorry, that's the wrong show.
Let's just mention Gladiators again. It takes them they film it across 2 days, sort of 12 or 13 hours. So they're all paid for loss of earnings. Different sums depending on how long they've been there. Not crazy sums, but not nothing. But one of the key things is a few times a year, the Gogglebox universe does adverts for products, and some of the longest serving Goggleboxers get to do those adverts. And for adverts, they're paid the absolute kind of going rate, which is a lot of money. Exactly. So, people are giving up an awful lot of employment opportunities to do that show. But yeah, so they get a stipend, a healthy stipend, I would say, certainly enough that would keep you happy, plus this opportunity to do adverts as well. So they're well remunerated. And of course, you can leave the Gogglebox universe and go on to other things, Scarlett Moffat being the sort of best example who left and, now is a staple on TV. But yeah, I think it's that's why so many of them have been there so long, so many of the much loved ones. It's back this week. Do you know what? Gogglebox constantly amazes me about how brilliant it is. You will never regret watching an episode of Gogglebox. You learn more about Britain from Gogglebox than pretty much any other TV show. If ever they do the news, you're like, oh, here we go. What have they got? When you watch Liz Truss in America embarrassing herself, you think, oh God, I hope they do that.
I hope they do it. Yeah, but it's like a focus group for the whole of culture. It's like a live, ongoing focus group where you love the people. I almost always love the people in focus groups because I think it's a completely fascinating sort of science. But you get to know the characters in the focus group. It's so warm and clever and amazing. It is the best high concept thing ever.
I was in a Netflix meeting the other day for a script that this guy's written, which is brilliant. And it's got like a final scene, which is a will he, won't he type scene. And we were talking through the scene. And I was saying, but I can just see this scene on Gogglebox with the Welsh couple going, oh no, he's not going to, is he? Oh, he's going to. Oh my God. Oh, don't. Oh, he's going to. And Netflix was saying, we think that all the time with scenes. We think, how would this play on Gogglebox? So it's it's just the most. It's very rare to have a show that's just is all good. And I think Gogglebox is one of those.
Yeah, what a cultural success right across the board. Fascinating.
There was a tweet once that said, which men in our culture would you be completely comfortable in a room with? And someone replied, the Siddiquis from Gogglebox. You think, yes,
absolutely,
exactly that. I have a question for you, Marina. This is from Paul. Thank you. We get so many questions, and we sort of look through them. Occasionally, one leaps out that I kind of think, I bet Marina will have a view on this. So Paul asks, do you know how real are car registrations in films and dramas? I would love it if you could help me to stop fixating on this question every time there is a shot of car registration in a film or drama. Otherwise, I think it's time I sought therapy.
Men in particular fixate over this, okay? I talked to someone to do in Line of Duty, and they were like, we get so much communication from people saying that Range Rover is you can't drive that, or you could just see it on the talk boards, people saying that Range Rover is not, that model could not have that registration plate, okay? Now, we're getting some real esoterica here, but the DVLA will issue what they call ghost plates, okay, to just get rid of this
ghost
whole
plates.
problem.
There's a
to
format.
get rid of
4 dead chefs compete against each other. Anyway, listen, I just
ghost plates.
This week on Ghost Plates,
Okay.
Fanny Craddock.
Okay. I love that show.
Okay.
Please, can you hold that? Okay, so unissued plates. Now, I should say that there's also something that this reads across to, which is phone numbers in things. Now, phone numbers, historically, whenever you see an American show, they always say area code 555 because it doesn't exist, and that enables, because, I've got to tell you, if you run a New York number, people will try and call the Ghostbusters. Yeah. If you say who you're going to call, and they will try and call the Ghostbusters, they will try and call any number. And a large number of people, many more than you think, will try and call any number that they see on screen ever. Now, Ofcom have got a recommended 01623 code for all British TV that doesn't, and... So that's just a bit of a detour on things like that.
My friend Tom Blakeson, who now produces The Wheel and lots of other quiz shows, he's the absolute quiz guru. When Armando Iannucci was doing the Armistice election thing and they put a phone number on screen and he put Tom Blakeson's phone number on there for some reason, Tom said it did not stop ringing for weeks.
It's unbelievable.
It was actually on screen for like 2 seconds. And he said everybody rang it.
People ring in all the time, which is why you have to anyway. But with cars, manufacturers have hire fleets, which they will lend out, which is obviously cheaper. But it's why you sometimes see like quite low down the chain coppers driving a really nice new Audi, and you think, well, how's that happened? But people really mind about this stuff. They also mind about like people getting out of cars and not locking the doors. They're like, what? I mean, you're trying to tell me this is a scene, it's a rough area. You're going in to talk to this person in this house about something they might have seen. If you not lock your car, people are obsessed with all these things, and it really takes them out of the moment. So don't seek therapy, Paul. You're not alone. You can find solace on many talk boards, I will tell you that.
There is the absolute boon now for editors who have that thing of, oh, you haven't locked your car, is the beep beep sound of an electric lock, which they can just add on in post. They go, hold on, he didn't lock his car. Oh, God, so stick on a beep, beep. And then we'll assume he's just done it with his electric thing. So it's a good question.
Not unlocking was a big thing. And then it was like, no, he's got one of those, things. Yeah, so it's all...
I was talking to an English actor recently who was working with a big name Hollywood actor, and he had to take a phone call, take a phone number on a phone call, write it down on a bit of paper for the Hollywood actor, and the Hollywood actor then had to respond. So he took down the note, he just wrote down, just wrote down some numbers. And the big name Hollywood actor looks at the bit of paper and just looks up at this actor and goes, what is this? And he goes, oh, I just wrote down a number. He goes, the number is supposed to be a New York number. I'm out of the scene completely. You've absolutely lost me. And you're like, okay. And that was just a bit of paper that's never going to be seen.
What a complete dick.
Yeah.
Unusual in that line of work.
Yes.
So unusual.
Isn't it just?
Richard, I have got a question for you. When an author's books are included in the daily deal on Amazon in the Kindle store at a reduced price, are you as the author or your agent involved in the decision, or do Amazon determine the reduced price?
It's a good question. In general, Amazon will set their own price for a book. So, if I have a new book out and the recommended retail price is £22, Amazon would almost always do it at £11.
Yeah.
It makes no difference to me if it's 11 or 22. They have to pay the same amount. It's just so they can get the most of the market. Your local bookshops, independent bookshops, cannot match that because they're paying rates, they're paying rents, they're providing service and all that kind of stuff. So if your local bookshop is selling them for £17, £18, they are not ripping you off. That's the cheapest that they can possibly do it. And if you feel it is worth your while paying an extra £6 or £7 just so you've got an amazing shop full of amazing people on your high street, I think it's well worth it.
Absolutely, always support if you can.
Exactly. But either way, the author is getting the same amount. And when it comes down to paperbacks, again, it'll be recommended price of about £10. Amazon will do them for £4.50. Your local shop will do them for £8, something like that. And the author gets exactly the same whatever. if you're talking about these daily deals and discounted things on Kindle, that is different. Amazon have to say to you, we want to make your book available for 99p or whatever it is. And if you want the publicity of that, you will do it. We've never ever discounted any of the Thursday Murder Club books on Kindle. They say volume for vanity, price for sanity. Because, if you do sell your book for 99p, you can sell a lot of books, but the author is not making a penny. So the author will make absolutely nothing. They will make pretty much nothing if you're charging £3 or less. There's nothing there. So that's just for the publisher just going, this has run out of steam. It might have been out for a year. We're not selling thousands and thousands a week. So let's just like on The Apprentice when they start selling cupcakes for £2 right at the end of the task just to get rid of them. So it's a good way of finding new authors. For authors, it can work that someone can try out their work for 99p and then go back into the back catalogue and buy the more expensive things. But by and large, if a book is discounted in a shop, the author gets full price. Those daily deals, when it's very, very cheap, the author will get nothing at all. But I will say again and again and again that local bookshops do not have that luxury. They work on fine margins and they provide a service that's above and beyond just sending you a book in a cardboard envelope, and nobody at an independent bookshop is grifting you.
No.
They are literally mortified that you can find this cheaper somewhere else because other people have different business plans, and that's why they by and large try and give you the best customer service that they can. But yeah, authors make money unless it's super low or daily discount, deal of the day, stuff like that.
Okay, this is a great one to finish on from Catherine Ward. After watching a recent episode of Pointless where someone couldn't hide their disappointment at their partner scoring 100, always my favourite, Richard, did you ever have to intervene in any on-set arguments between unhappy pairings, or have you heard of similar on any other shows? That's a good one.
God, that is a good question. Yeah, you certainly, it's, I always think that presenting duos are best, and I think that contestant duos are best as well, because instantly when people come on Pointless, maybe they're married and you're thinking who's married well, or they're married, you think you're quite a lot older than she is, and you think and you met 12 years ago, okay. So there's a little bit of judgment. By and large on Pointless, we're incredibly lucky because you get such brilliant contestant researchers, and so it's very rare you have people on the show that you don't warm to, that you just think, oh, you're a bit off. But yeah, you certainly get a thing where one partner will let the other partner down. Have I told the Lee Mack story before? So Lee Mack came on Pointless Celebrities with the late great Bobby Ball, who played his father in Not Going Out. So Lee comes on, and Lee come on because his kids love the show. Right, so he said, "I'll come on because my kids love it," and it turned up. It was a big thunderstorm. It had taken him forever to get there. He turned up only about 10 minutes before the show went on air, but he had his kids with him, and we said hi to the kids and blah blah blah. And so Lee comes on. He's there with Bobby. Gets there, and the question was words in the English language ending son. So words ending son. Okay. So Bobby Ball steps up first on the first podium and says, "Apple son." We're like, okay, all right, Bobby. I mean, where you got it from, I don't know. Anyway, the thing goes up 100. You go across the other podiums, low scores, low scores, low scores. You get back to Lee. He's already out on 100 points because Bobby Ball said "Apple son." He's back in his car 5 minutes later and off home. It does happen. We had the famous one that there's lots of clips of, is this pair who, I think the question was, name a country whose name ends in 2 consonants. And this woman says Paris. I think she was a geography student as well. And the meme of her partner's expression is so brilliant, which is, "I've come here to win Pointless. It's a country with 2 consonants at the end, and you said Paris.
And you're a geography student.
And you're a geography student. And so you do sometimes think that is going to be a long car journey home.
Oh.
The ones that I really feel it most, sometimes people come on with their boss. And you're like, come on, that's high tariff.
Yeah.
And if they get 100, you're like, that's not good. Or people come on with their father-in-law or their mother-in-law. And, they just...
You've got instant dynamics, haven't you?
Yeah,
whatever
exactly.
happens.
And then you're like, oh, don't get 100. And, some hundreds are good hundreds. Someone goes out on a limb, takes a risk, but some hundreds are proper bad ones. And, yeah, you do feel for people. And we have listened, the contestant team are very good. after the show, and because they have to come back as well. It's very, very rare. I think we had twice ever that a couple didn't come back. I think twice ever.
Wow. Just had some stuff to work out.
Had some stuff to yeah. One was a married couple who decided not to come back, and you're like, oh, that doesn't. And even when we were watching them, you're thinking. Okay.
More dangerous than starting wife swapping. You just don't know where this journey is going to lead. We're going to pull out now, and we're not going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. But by and large, they're lovely people, and we look after them. And you can see it's scary being on set and having a light shone on you and being asked a question that you know the answer to.
Obviously, and we could all do it.
It goes out of your head. So it's by and large, one is sympathetic. But yeah, there's a few friendships that you think, oh, it's not ever going to be quite the same. After this, is it? There's going to be just always something in between you, and it's not a pointless trophy.
No. Okay, Catherine. I hope that answered your question.
That's us done, I think.
I think it is. Okay, well, we'll see you next week for the main show, where we'll be talking about a number of things, including Saudi money in Hollywood.
Film washing. And in the meantime, have lovely weekends, whatever you're doing, or that you have a lovely weekend.
And thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.